The following is a presentation of the Match Talk Podcast Network.
Hey, Hokie Nation, want to give you a little bit of information about the 2017 Matt Talk Online D1 Preview Guide that'll be digitally available March 14th. This is everything you need to know about the NCAA championships in St. Louis, every wrestler, every record, historical data, anything you can think of that you would want to know about the tournament, including a fantasy primer and pick'em primer, things that you expect me to deliver to you. I've got it for you. $5 off the sticker price if you go to mattalkonline.com/fanguide17. And when you order, enter the promo code podcast. Yes, podcast, one word, all lowercase. It'll save you $5. It'll be digitally delivered to your email March 14th. You do not want to miss this awesome resource that I put out for the wrestling community. It's used by every PA announcer, well, myself included. It's also used by the ESPN Mat Side announcers and ESPN, their production team. They love it. So you want to get what they get, optimized for your tablet. It's usually $19.99. I'm knocking $5 off for listeners of the Matt Talk Podcast Network, especially you at Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Use the promo code podcast at mattalkonline.com/fanguide17 and order the quintessential wrestling preview guide. Nothing like it on the planet. You can get it, mattalkonline.com/fanguide17. Use that promo code podcast.
It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Kevin Dresser and his staff. Now, let's join your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, Jason Bryant.
Another episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling as the Hokies have wrapped up the predominantly portion of the regular season. There's still one more duel to go, and that will be the National Duels home match against Nebraska at Castle Coliseum. But before we get to that, the regular season portion of the schedule has been completed with the Hokies finishing up 17-1 today, talking to head wrestling coach Kevin Dresser about that, the ACC regular season title, which was won with a dual meet victory over NC State, 20-14 on Saturday at Castle Coliseum, and then closing out the, again, regular season, I'm using air quotes here, schedule with South Dakota State, a very gritty South Dakota State team that came in. They fought pretty hard. But Coach Dresser, let's just start with the weekend that was. We've got another topic that I think everybody's curious to get your thoughts on, but we'll get to that after we talk about what's now with the Hokie wrestling program. ACC regular season champ, 17-1. You got to like the sound of that.
Absolutely. It's a feather in the hat of all of our guys, not the 10 that just got the privilege to wrestle on Saturday against NC State. But it was a great environment. I think we had over 3,000 people here. you know, we were fortunate. I mean, maybe not fortunate, but we faced two really good coaches this weekend in Papalizio and Bono. Those guys are really obviously getting things done. And I guess we'll talk more about South Dakota State in a minute. But we knew that they would be ready to go. I mean, they're 7th ranked in the nation. You don't get 7th ranked unless you know what the heck you're doing. And this late in the year, they were obviously very battle tested. So we were excited about it. I mean, there was a few things that didn't go our way, and that's how dual meets usually happen. But overall, I thought our effort was good. And this is our third straight dual meet, and actually we've only been doing them for 3 years. So I think we would have won probably 5 or 6 in a row. So I'm bragging a little bit right now, but this is only the third year that the ACC has recognized a dual meet champ, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm sure if I am mistaken, somebody will correct me, but I'm pretty sure of that. And I just know that we haven't lost a ACC dual meet for a long time. And that's getting to be a bigger statement every year with just the rise of the ACC. So that chapter's over with. We can look at the trophy. It's on my desk, but we have to move on. And but overall, a very, very good piece of the puzzle for our program.
Yeah, let's look at that 20-14 victory over NC State. Most everything was chalk. There were a couple matches that would be toss-ups. You won most of the favored ones, although 184, Zach Zavatsky gets put to his back, loses to a scrappy Michael Machiavello. I mean, what's the situation there with Zavatsky? Was it just a one-move match, or was it something a little more there with Zach?
I think it ended up being a one-move match. He got caught in a scramble, and if you lose 4 swipes in college wrestling, you're down by 4. So, it was, besides that one scramble, it was obviously a close match, but it was, that's on us for making it too close of a match. Zach's a guy that has a ton of skills, and he's had some adversity now, and he actually, the best thing about Zach Savatsky was how he rebounded on Sunday, because he has a tendency, and if he's listening, he probably would agree with me. He better agree with me that he's his own worst enemy, and he's hard on himself. And this sport doesn't allow you to be hard on yourself very long. And so he was really good. It just happened to work out scheduling wise that he had to jump right back on the horse the next morning. And then on top of it, he kind of tweaked his ankle. So he had all kinds of reasons to talk himself out of it. And normally he would have done that, but he talked himself into it and went out and wrestled, not super great, but really good considering he was banged up. He just got beat the night before in a match he probably shouldn't have got beat. So that was the moral victory for us this weekend. So I know that he'll be excited to wrestle that match again, and that match could probably happen here in a couple of weeks at the ACC Championship. So that's kind of my take on 84.
Other toss-up, we're looking at 133 pounds Jamal Morris, Dennis Gustafson. Tight one this time. What's the situation with Gus here at 33?
He's making progress. I think, we're just starting to, he's really doing a good job with his weight and starting to feel good. Now he's just got to wrestle like he feels, which he was, he got caught up in the hand fighting too much. And when he started shooting to the legs, when he started attacking with leg attacks, he got to the legs, but he was there too late. And so he's a funny cat to read, because if you watch him in the room, sometimes it's like the guy shoots 40 times a minute. And for some reason this year he's getting more caught up in hand fighting and kind of wants one perfect move, and I just don't think that's his style. We're trying to get him out of crazy man mode, and so it's a fine line there that he's went the other way. We just got to figure out how to get somewhere in the middle where he's not flopping all over like a fish, but we also don't want him standing around doing nothing. And I think that's kind of what happened Saturday night.
Looking at some of the keys to that dual meet, it did come down to the last match. Zach Epperly and Nick Reenan. Epperly picked up the 5-3 victory. At least it was 17-14 going in there, but ultimately 20-14. Number 5, number 8, a top 10 matchup, top 8 matchup. Bonus points key coming from Ty Walls at heavyweight, Joey Dance at 125. Solid wins by Jared Haught over Malik McDonald at 197. And, it is what it is at 141 without Kevin Nordstrom in the lineup. Sam Spino and Solomon Shishko, another top 10 matchup. That one won by Shishko. Sal Mastriani with a win over a scrappy true freshman, Thomas Boulder from NC State. What did you like with the bonus points victories? This is kind of a loaded question with Ty and Joey, knowing that you look at those bonus points. There's an extra major here, there's an extra major there. That's 18, and that can swing the balance completely the other way.
Well, yeah, bonus points are important for dual meets, but they're also really important at the NCAA tournament. I mean, just look at what Penn State's potential is, because they've got 4 guys at bonus point almost every time they go out there. So, Ty Walls has proven to be our guy that's the bonus point king in our team right now, and that's just because he tries to kick your butt from the minute the whistle blows until the minute he's done with you. And so that's what we're seeing a little bit more out of with Joey right now. And Joey really attacked that whole match, and it was a real tight match. And then with about 2.5 minutes to go, he opened it up because he didn't stand around, which he can get in the habit of doing. And then all of a sudden you're in all those 1-point matches. So I thought Solomon Shishko's really coming around. He had a great weekend, except for the last 2 minutes of South Dakota State. He wrestled 12 great minutes and 2 bad minutes, but he's coming around. Haught's solid. Mastriani's wrestling as well as he's wrestled. So I really like the progress of all those guys I just mentioned.
What's it mean to come off a high like that and winning the ACC regular season dual meet championship? By the way, Devin Carter, great job on the commentary. I got to just mention that. You mentioned it last week that he'd be on it. I was watching most of that duel via ESPN3. And I was like, hey, color commentator, man, Devin Carter, you did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, I heard that too. I asked him if he did a pretty good job, and he said he thought he did, but Devin's kind of humble. So, but I did hear other people say that, so that's something that we need to keep Devin in the booth.
Yeah, because from a wrestling perspective, it's hard to jump in there, but the technical knowledge that he presented, hey, it was definitely good for me to hear. Just being able to watch this and watch it from my phone as I was having dinner. The no phones at the table rule doesn't happen. That rule gets waived when some of my client teams are wrestling. But anyway, back to the South Dakota State match. Now, coming off that high, how tough was it, or what was the trick there to keep everybody high, coming off that high with the win, and you got the big win over NC State, and you got to come back the next morning. This is a quick turnaround time with another weigh-in coming in, at noon basically the next day. How do you keep them up for South Dakota State?
Well, we talked about it early. We talked about the weekend as a whole as we prepared, not just NC State, and I tried to simulate a little bit. I was calculated in my scheduling. I wanted them to have to make weight back-to-back days, and I wanted them to have two pretty good opponents. I didn't realize when we scheduled South Dakota State that they were going to be quite that good, but it was just a good test. I really kind of wanted to simulate like a Thursday night, Friday morning at the NCAA tournament, and it actually ended up being harder, of course, because anybody that's pulled any weight, knowing you've got to make scratch instead of scratch plus one the next day, it's hard. And so it ended up probably being harder, but I thought we did a good job. We had to get our weight down after the match on Saturday night. We had to get to bed early, then we had to get up early and warm up, or get up earlier than normal. Usually we do you might do a 7 o'clock and a 7 o'clock, but I like the structure of it. And yeah, they were, South Dakota State was obviously fresher than us because they hadn't competed for 3 days. So I knew we weren't going to be the fresh guy, but sometimes you got to figure out how to get your hand raised. And we did that in a couple situations in that dual meet. So overall, I thought it was a positive weekend and a positive Sunday.
Yeah, you could say, you can look at the box score and say gritty South Dakota State. They only won 3 matches, and 2 of which were by fall. But you look, they had the 2 overtime losses. The Kocher brothers, Zach Epperly, a little sluggish there, as you mentioned, the last 2 minutes of Solomon Shishko's match against Alex Kocher, who's pushed some good guys this year. This was, we're 2 overtime losses away from this thing being a completely different interview.
Absolutely. It was closer than the score actually indicated it really was. Zach Epperly kind of tweaked his knee, nothing serious, but he right away the first minute or so, and I could tell it, and but he figured it out and got his hand raised, and Solomon Shishko looked great for 5 minutes and hopefully learned a valuable lesson that we have to keep teaching Solomon over and over, is that the matches aren't 5 minutes. He just has that natural tendency to get ahead and just kind of put it on cruise control, and that's something that we keep trying to change, and he seems to change it every now and then, but then he kind of goes back to there, and he obviously went back there a little bit on Sunday at that match, but overall it was a good win for us.
Is this this scheduling South Dakota State something that you're, after the last 2 years, you're like, hey, you know what, we'd like to see these guys on the schedule regularly because of what they bring to the table?
I always have scheduled a trip to the Midwest. Last year we went to the Midwest and wrestled South Dakota State, North Dakota State. This year we went and wrestled UNI in Missouri. So I always like to schedule one out there, and I haven't thought that far ahead yet because most of our scheduling doesn't happen until after the NCAA tournament. But definitely like those guys. North Dakota State comes to the Virginia Duels, so we might see them. But both those programs, North Dakota State and South Dakota State, are really doing a great job. Wow, they've, arguably 2 of the most improved programs in the nation right now.
All right, now shifting gears to the national duels discussion in terms of the opponent for Virginia Tech. We learned it would be the 6th-ranked Huskers, the University of Nebraska, Coach Mark Manning's team, coming off back-to-back losses. They lost against Ohio State. They lost against Iowa to close out their regular season. But on paper, this is a team that can do some damage at the NCAA championship. This is a dangerous team in dual meets. And what do you like about the Nebraska matchup?
Well, we're going to get tested in a lot of places, and you said it. I think they got beat by Iowa and Ohio State just recently, and I think that they probably, just kind of reading between the lines, I think Coach Manning felt like they didn't perform, and so they're definitely battle tested, maybe quite to where he wanted them to perform. But if you look at that lineup, it's wow. I mean, they're really good. I mean, they're really good. That could be a great dual meet, But 5 and 6, I guess that's what it's supposed to be. So we're fired up. We know they'll bring all the heat of a powerful Big Ten team, and so that's what we're doing it for.
Yeah, individually, this also could impact the seedings because, obviously the ACC tournament's going to impact things. But when you look at the national matchups that are in play here, Tim Lambert, Joey Dance is going to be one that has seeding interest. 184 pounds, Zavatsky again, got TJ Dudley in one of the deepest weight classes in the country. Maybe to a lesser extent, Ty Walls, although he's pretty much a heavy favorite over Colin Jensen. But individually, there's bonus points are going to need to be had. But mainly from a seeding perspective, come nationals, 125, 184 seem to be the ones that you got to put a star next to.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a good way to read it. There's going to be a lot of good bouts, but those two right there, probably will have some implications. So, I know Joey's excited about that, and I hope Zach is, because that's what you go to college for. You go to college to wrestle the best guys, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be the top seed at the Nationals or the second seed or the third seed. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think being calculated and circling those matches, if you're a competitor, is important, and saying, you know what, I got the fourth ranked guy tonight and I'm going to go beat him so I get a better seed than him. That's motivation. That's the way I think. And so, I hope our guys are thinking the same way. So, I always say pressure is a privilege, and if that's pressure, then take it as a privilege.
Yeah, and the way the schedules work, you don't always get an opportunity to wrestle a guy higher after you take, let's use Zavatsky as an example, losing to a lower-ranked Machiavello. It would have to take the ACC championship to get a chance to just get over him, and that loss may have dropped him considerably. A win over TJ Dudley will put him back up in a situation where now, if he beats Machiavello for the ACC in the ACCs, that early loss is kind of okay. Well, that kind of gets washed away a little bit in terms of how the seeding committee may think. I don't have any inside information on that, but just based on what history tells us, you beat somebody that's pretty highly ranked. That's going to really offset a bad loss.
Yep, I think that's all part of this, the logic, not the strategy, but the logic. And so, I think just with Zach and just with everybody, is they have to just go out. And I mean, they just have to go out and wrestle. And if you go out there to wrestle for a seed or not a seed, I think it's a trap a little bit. I think you just got to go out there and want to beat the guy because you got a good guy. And that's what we need to focus on. Let's go out and just beat a really good guy. Just because we want to poke our chest out more than the other guy on the way out of the gym or something. That's what we need to focus on.
What's one thing that you know about Mark Manning's teams that you can expect Hokie Nation to see from Nebraska?
Well, they're just, they've always had some skill. They're obviously well coached, but they're competitors. I mean, if you take them down, they're not going to lay in their bellies. They're going to get up and they're going to fight you. And they kind of have a Midwest flair to riding, where they're more just real heavy on you, parallel kind of riders, versus maybe guys out here that might spiral ride or might claw ride or might leg ride a little bit more. These guys are more probably Midwest blue collar, just kind of grind you in the mat guys. And I haven't watched a ton of video on them, being that it's only Tuesday, but we'll learn more about them individually here as the week goes on.
So now we come to the meat of the matter, and for I guess this is the part of the interview people were expecting to hear. Last year, you ruffled some feathers and had some quite colorful language. Yeah. I think I had to pick my jaw up about an hour after we finished that last year. But your perspective on the national duels, going in based on last week's interview, it seems like you were expecting Nebraska or Ohio State. You got Nebraska. Let's just not necessarily pick up where we left off in terms of how you thought going in last year, but this year, what are your thoughts on how the situation presented itself to get Nebraska, and where do you stand on, let's be honest, that will Virginia Tech ever wrestle Iowa?
Well, I think, first off, this will be my disclaimer in that I'm a much more calmer, composed Coach Dresser this year than I was 12 months ago to the day on this one, the last time we talked about this. So, I won't call anybody names. I won't refer to them as fruit. I won't do any of that. I'll take the high road. But I think the thing that sticks out with the national duels is there was more transparency on their part this year, and that, hey, our hands are tied, and we gotta, we've had requests out there from certain schools that want to supposedly stay regional if they're not wrestling for the national championship. And so there was some caveats out there. I thought Cale Sanderson's tweet was interesting, if anybody looked at that yesterday, because if you look at his tweet, that's exactly how it was explained to us at the convention a couple years ago when we adopted this format, that the number one would wrestle the number one, the number two would wrestle the number two, the number three would wrestle number three, and he drew it out, and it was actually, he's got good penmanship even. But
I might disagree with you on that. I mean, it's
for a wrestling coach,
yeah.
For a wrestling coach, his penmanship is better than mine. So his ankle pick and his penmanship are better than mine. But anyway, so I actually last year I guess I really threw the NWCA under the bus and Mike Moyer and his crew, and to the contrary, this year I actually feel bad for him a little bit in that they were asked to facilitate this, especially this year and last year, and they graciously chose to facilitate this just for the just for the best interest of the sport, and so the fans would have some really cool matchups at the end of the year. And this concept was actually put out by Cody Sanderson 2 years ago at the convention. So it was all the coaches looked at it and liked it and agreed to it, and most of them liked it. I mean, you're never going to get all the coaches to like everything, but so now the NWCA facilitates this, and then you have certain schools will remain nameless that have personal agendas and whatever you want to call them. That's where the problem lies. And Mike and his crew and the NWCA, their hands are tied because the contracts that we sign are not NCAA contracts. They're basically non-binding contracts. So, all this was put together in good faith that, hey, if you sign a contract and send it back, which we all did, then it's kind of like a gentleman's agreement. And maybe not kind of, it is that was what everybody else has done. So, of course, I had a bazillion texts from a lot of different coaches, Division I coaches, saying, "Why aren't you guys wrestling Iowa? Why aren't you wrestling Iowa?" I just said, "Hey, that's on them. That's not on us. They're the ones that have to defend that." And so I don't have any hard feelings towards anyone. I feel bad for the NWCA that they really inherited this mess and everybody's throwing them under the bus. And that's not correct. They just, their whole purpose is to help wrestling, and they agree to facilitate this daggone thing. And then, people are breaking their contracts and sign contracts that don't mean anything. But to me, if I put my name on something, I'm coming. I don't care if they put me in Alaska to wrestle a dual meet. If I sign our name to it, we're going to it. 4 years ago, we went to Corvallis, Oregon, and didn't get back till Tuesday and had to wrestle somebody on Friday. I don't remember what it was, and we put our name on the contract, and that's where we ended up. And we missed school, and we spent a crap load of money, and we did it all in an effort to make a dual meet important, and it was a really great event out in Corvallis. So that's where we're at, and I think there's I can't believe that the fan base of certain schools, again, to remain nameless, wouldn't want to see great matchups and to get your guys ready for the nationals. But that's going to be the case. And so everybody has their reasons. It's not my place to get in the head of another head coach. My head's complicated enough, but I do think we missed another good opportunity. But again, with all that being said, we're tickled to death to wrestle Nebraska because those guys are tough. It's what we need. We need a tough test before the ACC. So we're getting it with Nebraska. So that's my long-winded, friendly Coach Dresser speak right there.
Now, I also went on a little bit of a 20-minute rant. Not a rant. It was more of a monologue.
Take?
Yeah. Went on a 20-minute monologue about my involvement in the process. Again, I'm not involved in the process. And again, just to clarify, I do work for the NWCA in a freelance capacity with their media relations. So the press releases and things that went out, yep, those are my responsibility to get out, and the rankings and whatnot. And we did expand the rankings to 16 voters this year, 2 per conference. So again, that transparency issue that came up with the NC State Virginia Tech situation last year on who should be getting it, the higher ranked team or the conference champion that just recently won. And that's where last year you could see there was an argument for both. I think right now, if you're going scratch down the line, Iowa should be wrestling Virginia Tech. And that was kind of my statement there, not speaking for the association, speaking as a wrestling person. I told the world, basically, I agreed with Cale's breakdown in terms of how these matchups should happen. Now, I'm curious on contractually, what is in the contract that Virginia Tech signs that may be different from school to school? I'm curious on that respect.
Well, I think initially the school in question said if they weren't wrestling for the national championship that they were only going to compete regionally. So that was what was told to us 2-3 weeks ago. And again, I was good with. I mean, I knew exactly going into this for the last month that who we might be wrestling and who didn't want to wrestle out here. And so that was the way that. So basically, people sent back contracts, but you could obviously you could write asterisks in there and say, hey, this is a contract, but by the way, we don't want to go here, we don't want to go there. And that's really, was up front this time around. And, what's the NWCA going to say? No, we're going to tear it up and send it back to you because you wrote in your own language or whatever. No, I mean, the NWCA is here to help wrestling and getting those power power teams involved is obviously big because they sell tickets, and this is a ticketed event, and the NWCA needs money because they work their butt off. They got bills to pay and staffs to pay, and they do a tremendous amount of things for our sport. So it's still a business. So when you get teams that change the rules or pull out or drop out, you're hurting the NWCA.
Now, as we look at, this is something I also brought up on the short time monologue that I talk about, is that the three power schools, and we're talking about three in the situation of Iowa, Oklahoma State, and Penn State. So we've got those three, right. And it's in my vantage point is those three teams seem to ask for more concessions in certain situations to be able to compete in this event. Now, comparing that to Virginia Tech, now if we go back to Northern Iowa, to the national duels there, Virginia Tech competed there. Not quite a top 10 team program in that range, working on there. Then they made the finals the year, beating Oklahoma State, wrestling in the championship finals there. Then there's the regional format, which you guys were shifted around. And then there is the, let's go to the central site format. You've been involved in every single aspect of this event, whereas not all of those the big three schools have. Why do you think Virginia Tech and Ohio State and Cornell and Missouri, with the exception of this year, are more apt to give these things a try versus the big three?
I think there's a protection thing. They want to maybe protect what they've got a little bit there, and I don't know. I mean, I take my hat off to a guy like Tom Ryan, who Tom Ryan supported the national duels. The national duels. Every year when he, even when he didn't have a great team, and he's obviously had a lot of great teams. So I think just the dual meet is really, really important to some coaches, and other coaches it isn't as important. I can tell you this, I'm going to get on the bandwagon hard because the NCAA wants to do, and they even told us at the convention last August, they really want to do a dual meet component thing and have the points carry over. And that's kind of a hot topic with the coaches. But I think if they brought it back up, and I understand they are working on it, that it would get great support. And so I hope they do it just because I think it's good. I mean, they put stats out there that show that the change in finishes, if they would have implemented a dual meet concept in kind of conjunction with the individual tournament, the top three didn't change one time in the last 10 years. And then after that, a few of them changed. So I just think that anything we can do to get ourselves more big time matches on that really matter, that everybody's got to come to, I think that it's good for the sport. I really do. And, we could have a great product out there if we let the NCAA take it over. And then if they take it over, there's no funny business,
Yeah, but here's one thing people need to understand. If the NCAA takes something over like this, I got a hunch people are going to be wanting the NCAA. Like, no, we need to go back to this. I mean, basically, you've had 20 years of this. And if the NCAA is going to do what the NCAA wants to do. So I think people don't understand that. If it wasn't for, say, and I'm actually going to speak as a former employee in this respect, when I was in Tahoe in, I believe it was 2006, 2007, that range, when the qualifier system was a big deal. The qualifying system that we have now came out of an NWCA convention, whereas the NCAA was going to go conference champions and then everybody else wild cards. And that was like, no. So it was that meeting that came the qualifier situation, which ultimately, as confusing as it may seem from year to year, it's still the best system we've got. So remember, folks, just because this may or may not be what the duels are now, you be careful what you wish for if you want the NWCA to get out of this game. So I'm just going to be forewarned there based on my knowledge of how the NCAA works, because the NCAA does what the NCAA is going to do. And once they've given the wrestling community their shot at something, they'll be like, okay, your plan didn't work. We're going to do it now. And that may not be something the wrestling community is ready for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I look at it this way is that the NWCA and the NCAA worked really well together and put together a great qualifying system that all the coaches like, that nobody was really sure of back in 2007, I think 2008. And obviously we've messed around with the dual meet concept, the NWCA is. And so I think if those two entities work together and come up with a product, and let's face it, the NCAA Division I championships that we all know that's going to be in St. Louis, the NCAA knocks it out of the park with that. I mean, they've got the best tournament that we've ever, every year it's just more unbelievable. So you got to pat them on the back for that. So I do think that you could tie one to the other, and I think it would be good. And that's just my opinion. And there's coaches out there that might disagree with that, but I think if we want to have a true national duels champion or something at the end of the year, then coming up with a format might not be a bad thing. So that's just we're kind of where I'm at position wise. But I'm a fan of the NWCA and I'm a fan of the NCAA. If they work together, I think they've done pretty well.
So, folks, if you're listening to the show expecting some fiery commentary, Kevin Dresser, a much more refined topic this year, but as he's going to focus on the ACC Dual Meet Champions teams that he has going into the ACC Championships this year, and Nebraska coming to Castle Sunday, February 19th, 6:30 p.m. That is 6:30. I believe the initial release said 7, but 6:30 p.m. Eastern. That one on ACC Network Extra, which you can commonly find on ESPN3 and the ESPN3 app, the Watch ESPN3 app. I know it's the ACC is building their television network, just an online situation right now. Find that on the ESPN3 Watch ESPN app as well. It's also got apps everywhere. So, Coach Dresser, final thoughts as you head into Nebraska on Sunday. This is where your focus is before the ACC tournament.
Well, first off, I didn't need to jump up and down and light my hair on fire because enough people did in the last 24 hours on Twitter. So if you want to have some fun reading, just go to Twitter and, you can Google the word orange, I guess, and you'll get everything you want for the last 24 hours. But so I guess the people have spoken in that thing. So that's I was kind of prepared that this all these pairings were going to happen like they happened, and so here we are. And Nebraska is a great way for the Hokie Nation to get out and see us for the last time this year before we go to Raleigh and before we go to St. Louis. So bring them out, bring them out, bring them out.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get kicked off of iTunes for your bad singing there. But anyway, Coach Dresser, we will circle back as we head into the ACC Championships and Hokie Nation. Check out that promo code beginning of the show for the Matt Talk Online digital preview fan guide. Use that promo code podcast and get your preview guide today. So, Coach Dresser, thanks for the time, and we'll see you down the line.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.